instrument, there's a raging storm approaching the island.
That's bad.
But it won't get here for a couple of days.
That's good.
And just sit right back and you'll hear a tale. Gilligan's Island wasn't just a goofy sitcom about castaways. It was a pressure cooker of behind-the-scenes chaos, risky stunts, network meddling, and secret feuds. What looked like lighthearted slapstick on screen often hid real injuries, near disasters, and studio politics that nearly sank the show before it ever set sail. From toxic lagoon waters that made actors sick, to last-minute casting changes that altered TV history, to battles with CBS executives over syndication, the truth behind Gilligan's Island is stranger than any storyline the writers dreamed up. Today, we're diving deep into 20 weird facts about Gilligan's Island that will completely change the way you watch the series, and wait until you hear the bonus fact, a bizarre twist that even hardcore fans almost never discover. Stay tuned. This is one TV shipwreck you won't want to miss. The lagoon was actually toxic. On screen, the lagoon looked like paradise, a sparkling body of water where Gilligan and the skipper bumbled through endless misadventures. In reality, it was a man-made water feature on the CBS lot in Studio City, California. But here's the catch. The lagoon was filled with stagnant, untreated water. Over time, it became a breeding ground for bacteria and mosquitoes. Cast members later admitted they often got sick after shooting there. Dawn Wells, Mary Ann, revealed in interviews that the water smelled foul, and sometimes props like rafts would literally rot after sitting in it. What looked like sunny tropical fun was actually hazardous. Actors dreaded lagoon scenes, and production staff joked that it was less a lagoon and more a swamp of doom. Paradise on TV was misery in reality. Tina Louise hated being Ginger. Tina Louise, who played glamorous movie star Ginger Grant, never warmed up to the role. Unlike the rest of the cast, who embraced their characters as career-defining, Louise felt typecast and trapped. She resented the show's slapstick tone and believed it hurt her chances at serious film roles. Behind the scenes, she often clashed with castmates and skipped reunions for decades. Dawn Wells once admitted she thought she was above it all. Fans adored Ginger, but Louise's discontent created tension that never fully healed. Ironically, the reluctant movie star dynamic mirrored her character's storyline, where Ginger constantly complained about being stranded with ordinary people. What audiences didn't know was that Louise often felt stranded on the set itself, isolated from her castaways, just like Ginger on the island. The theme song left actors out. The first season's theme song famously introduced the movie star, the professor, and Mary Ann as simply, and the rest. That phrasing infuriated Russell Johnson, the professor, and Dawn Wells, Mary Ann. Imagine being reduced to the rest every week on national television. Wells later admitted it hurt morale, while Johnson called it insulting. Fans noticed too, and complaints eventually reached producers. By season 2, the opening was re-recorded to include their names. The change seemed small, but it symbolized respect. Not X, but Y, not extras, but equals. This behind-the-scenes shift reflected a deeper truth. The show's real charm came not just from Gilligan and the skipper, but from the entire ensemble. What looked like a catchy tune was, in reality, a battle over recognition. Natalie Schafer hid her real age. Natalie Schafer, who played the wealthy and dainty Mrs. Howell, kept a huge secret, her age. She was actually in her 60s when Gilligan's Island began filming, but lied on her resume to pass as younger. Her glamorous appearance and quick wit fooled audiences and even some co-stars. Schafer openly admitted later in life that she'd taken roles that required stretching the truth, saying, "Nobody ever checks." The truth only became widely known after her passing. Even stranger? She left her fortune, worth millions at the time, not to family, but to her beloved poodle. On screen, she played an eccentric millionaire's wife. Off screen, she lived the part, hiding truths and leaving behind a legacy as mysterious as Mrs. Howell's pearls. Bob Denver fought for his castmates. Bob Denver, who played the bumbling but lovable Gilligan, wasn't just the show's comedic center, he was also its moral compass behind the scenes. When Russell Johnson and Dawn Wells were excluded from the opening theme credits, Denver threatened to walk unless they were properly recognized. His ultimatum worked. Producers caved, and their names were added in later seasons. Denver's loyalty didn't stop there. During contract negotiations, he reportedly pushed for fairer pay for the ensemble, often putting his own star status on the line. What audiences saw was a clueless goof always ruining escape plans. What they didn't see was a fiercely loyal colleague who fought to make sure everyone got the respect they deserved. Gilligan may have been the clown, but Denver was the quiet hero of the cast. Alan Hale Jr. refused to leave the set after injury. Alan Hale Jr., the towering actor behind the skipper, was as tough as he was kind-hearted. During one episode, he seriously injured his arm while filming a stunt. Instead of halting production, Hale hid his pain, propped himself up, and finished the day's shoot. Later, doctors discovered he had torn muscles that required weeks of healing. His reasoning? He didn't want to slow down the crew or risk delaying an already chaotic schedule. Hale's resilience mirrored his character's larger-than-life toughness. But behind the laughter, there was real sacrifice. He often bruised, cut, and battered himself during physical comedy scenes, yet never complained. Not weakness, but strength. What looked like bumbling pratfalls on screen was, in reality, a testament to Hale's grit and unshakable work ethic. Jim Backus brought chaos to the set. Jim Backus, who played the pompous millionaire Thurston Howell III, was beloved for his comedic timing, but he also had a mischievous streak. Known for his role as the voice of Mr. Magoo, Backus would sometimes slip into the cartoon voice during serious takes, throwing his co-stars off. He also had a habit of sneaking alcohol onto the set, which occasionally disrupted filming. Backus enjoyed being the jokester, but not everyone laughed. Dawn Wells admitted some days he could be a handful, yet his improvisation often added sparkle to otherwise flat scenes. Not just scripted comedy, but chaos-driven brilliance. What audiences thought was pure polish often had an unpredictable spark, courtesy of Backus's wild streak both on and off camera. The show faced brutal critical reviews. Today, Gilligan's Island is considered a TV classic, but when it first aired in 1964, critics savaged it. The New York Times dismissed it as witless, and others accused it of insulting viewers' intelligence. CBS executives were nervous, fearing the show wouldn't survive past its first season. Yet audiences thought differently. Ratings were strong, and viewers embraced its silly charm. Not brilliance, but comfort. Families tuned in each week not for high art, but for escapism. The divide between critical scorn and public adoration made Gilligan's Island one of the earliest examples of a cult TV hit, mocked in print but loved in living rooms. What critics missed was exactly what made it timeless: joy in simplicity. The cast's contract prevented them from making money. For many of the actors, Gilligan's Island became both a blessing and a curse. Their contracts didn't include residuals from reruns or syndication, which later became worth millions. That meant while the show earned CBS and producers a fortune, the cast saw none of it beyond their original salaries. Dawn Wells later admitted she sometimes struggled financially, despite being recognized worldwide as Mary Ann. Bob Denver said bluntly, "We got nothing." The cruel irony? The island castaways were poor in fiction and became poor in reality too. What audiences thought was a cheerful paycheck sitcom was actually a story of missed wealth, one of television's biggest cautionary tales about unfair contracts. The original pilot looked very different. Before the version we all know, CBS filmed a completely different pilot for Gilligan's Island in 1963. It featured a different theme song and even a slightly altered cast. The professor and the two girls weren't the same actors who later became iconic. When CBS tested it, executives felt it lacked spark. Sherwood Schwartz, the show's creator, fought for major recasting and a catchier opening theme. The revamped version became the series we remember. But what if CBS had aired the first pilot? We might never have gotten Dawn Wells as Mary Ann or Russell Johnson as the professor. Go ahead and like and subscribe because the story of Gilligan's Island proves one thing. TV history often turns on strange accidents and risky choices. The cast suffered under hot studio lights. The island may have looked breezy and tropical, but in reality, most indoor scenes were filmed under blistering studio lights at CBS. Temperatures often soared above 100 degrees, leaving actors drenched in sweat. Heavy costumes didn't help. Alan Hale Jr. sweltered in his thick skipper's uniform, while Tina Louise's glamorous gowns trapped heat. To keep the cast from fainting, crew members set up giant fans between takes. Dawn Wells recalled that makeup melted off within minutes, forcing endless touch-ups. What looked like carefree comedy was filmed in brutal, exhausting conditions. The irony? Audiences assumed the hardest part was being stranded. In truth, the hardest part was surviving CBS's suffocating sound stages, where paradise turned into an oven. CBS canceled it for Gunsmoke. Gilligan's Island ended not because of low ratings, it actually held steady viewership, but because CBS wanted to save Gunsmoke. In 1967, the network was under pressure to renew the long-running Western, beloved by top executives. To make room on the schedule, Gilligan's Island was axed despite being popular. Cast members were blindsided, expecting at least another season. Sherwood Schwartz called the decision devastating. What audiences didn't know was that TV politics, not performance, killed the show. Not failure, but favoritism. The cancellation stung for years, especially since reruns later proved Gilligan's Island had staying power. The little show about castaways was sacrificed to keep cowboys riding across CBS's prime time. Dawn Wells made her own costumes. Marianne's wholesome charm came with her iconic wardrobe of gingham dresses and short shorts. But here's the secret. Dawn Wells often designed and sewed many of her own outfits. With the show's limited costume budget, she stepped in, using her background in home economics and fashion. Fans loved Marianne's girl-next-door style, unaware that Wells herself was behind much of it. In interviews, she joked that while Ginger got glamorous gowns, Marianne's clothes came from my sewing machine. Not just an actress, but a creative force. This DIY spirit gave Marianne authenticity, grounding her character in warmth and practicality. What audiences thought was a simple wardrobe choice was really Wells stitching herself into TV history. The show faced censorship battles. Even though it was a light-hearted sitcom, Gilligan's Island ran into trouble with TV censors. Ginger's revealing gowns and Marianne's short shorts often sparked complaints. The CBS Standards and Practices Department frequently ordered edits, worried about family values. One memo demanded that camera angles avoid focusing on the actress's legs for too long. Sherwood Schwartz pushed back, arguing that their costumes reflected character personalities. The tug-of-war over decency was constant. Not scandalous, but censored. Ironically, what was considered risque then looks tame today. But the battles behind the scenes revealed how tightly TV comedy was policed in the 1960s, even when the biggest offense was a little too much bare skin on a stranded island. The castaway hut sets were miserable. The huts where the castaways lived looked cozy on screen, but the reality was far from charming. Built on sound stages, they were poorly ventilated and often filled with sawdust, straw, and bugs. The smell was overwhelming under hot lights. Actors complained that the rough materials caused constant itching and allergic reactions. Bob Denver joked that the huts were a rash waiting to happen. Set designers worked hard to make them look authentic, but authenticity came with a price. Discomfort, not tropical retreat, but splintered misery. What audiences thought were comfortable shelters from the storm were, in fact, itchy cages where the actors had to spend endless hours pretending to relax in island comfort. Real stunts put the cast in danger. Unlike modern sitcoms, Gilligan's Island often relied on practical stunts. Bob Denver endured constant pratfalls, slipping, tumbling, and colliding with props. But the accidents weren't always planned. Denver once hit his head so hard he required stitches, while Alan Hale Jr. nearly drowned during a water sequence when his heavy costume dragged him under. With minimal stunt doubles and a rushed shooting schedule, the cast often performed their own gags. Not safe, but risky. What audiences laughed at, a coconut crashing down or Gilligan flipping a raft, sometimes left bruises, cuts, and lasting pain. The slapstick looked effortless, but it was born of real scrapes and near misses. Comedy on screen, danger off screen. That was the unspoken reality of Gilligan's Island. The show was a global sensation. Though critics mocked it at home, Gilligan's Island exploded in popularity overseas. The series was syndicated in dozens of countries, where it became a cultural curiosity. Some nations even believed it was based on real events. In the Philippines, officials reportedly fielded letters from concerned citizens asking if the castaways had ever been rescued. Not fiction, but myth. The idea of stranded Americans captured imaginations worldwide, showing how television could transcend borders. While CBS executives underestimated its value, reruns built a cult following far beyond U.S. shores. What audiences didn't realize was that Gilligan's Island became one of the first true global sitcom exports, a shipwreck that floated across oceans. Sherwood Schwartz fought network interference. Creator Sherwood Schwartz had a constant battle with CBS executives. They doubted his vision, disliked the silliness, and wanted more serious storylines. At one point, an executive demanded that Gilligan be less stupid to appeal to adults. Schwartz pushed back, insisting the charm came from Gilligan's innocence. He also fought to keep the ensemble balanced, rejecting demands to spotlight only Gilligan and the skipper. Not obedience, but defiance. His stubbornness saved the show's unique identity. Without his resistance, Gilligan's Island might have been just another generic sitcom. What audiences didn't see was the tug-of-war behind the curtain. Schwartz defending his little show that could against a corporate tide determined to sink it. Strange fan theories emerged. Over the years, Gilligan's Island inspired bizarre fan interpretations. One of the most persistent theories suggested that each character represented one of the 7 deadly sins. Ginger as lust, the skipper as wrath, Mr. Howell as greed, Mrs. Howell as sloth, the professor as pride, Mary Ann as envy, and Gilligan himself as Satan. While Sherwood Schwartz laughed off the idea, the theory stuck around, adding eerie depth to what was meant as simple comedy. Not innocence, but allegory. Fans projected meaning far beyond the writer's intentions, proving the series' lasting cultural impact. What was once dismissed as fluff turned into a playground for symbolic analysis, an accidental mythology born from a sitcom about coconut radios. The reunion movies tried to fix it. Years after the show ended, CBS produced reunion movies, including Rescue from Gilligan's Island, 1978. For the first time, the castaways were saved, but audiences quickly learned they couldn't function in the modern world. Later movies even saw them stranded again. Fans were thrilled to see the characters return, but the productions revealed Hollywood's inability to let the island go. Not closure, but repetition. Dawn Wells admitted she wished the original ending had been more definitive. Instead, the reunion specials highlighted the bittersweet truth. The castaways were forever trapped, both in fiction and in the public's imagination. Escape was impossible, even decades later. The lagoon is still there? Sort of. The CBS lagoon, infamous for its foul smell and bacteria, was eventually drained and covered over. But for decades, parts of it remained visible near the studio lot, a haunting reminder of the show's origins. Even stranger, the site has since been redeveloped into part of a modern office park. Fans visiting today would never guess they're standing on what was once TV's most infamous tropical swamp. Not destroyed, but hidden. Just like the castaways' endless attempts at rescue, the lagoon never truly disappeared. It merely changed disguise. What audiences thought was long gone still lingers, ghost-like, beneath the concrete of Hollywood itself. Gilligan's Island was never just a silly sitcom, it was a battleground of egos, dangers, network meddling, and cultural misunderstandings. What looked like harmless slapstick hid injuries, heartbreak, and fights for respect. And yet, it endured. From critical flop to global icon, the show became proof that television's real legacy often comes not from prestige, but from joy. So next time you hear a 3-hour tour, remember the truth. It was never just a tour, it was survival, on screen and off. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if you want more untold Hollywood stories. Because in TV history, there's always another secret waiting to be shipwrecked.